Welcome to the world of scary stories. Here you'll learn about Spanish scary stories in English. You can also choose the story you want from the descriptions using timestamps and titles. Subscribe, like, and share your creepiest stories in the comments. I look forward to seeing you all. Get your ears ready. Get comfortable, turn off the lights, and let yourself be immersed in what awaits you. These are Spanish scary bedtime stories. Let's begin. First story. Don't pick up anyone in abandoned villages. My dad drove a flatbed truck. Those little trucks with sides and railings or fences, you know. The markings on the loading dock. It was his work truck, but he was allowed to use it on the weekends for extra work, as long as he took good care of it. And on one of these trips to another town, This is what happened to us. We went to a small town about 40 minutes from here to deliver some materials for a construction site. We loaded up a few bags of cement and some lumber. Like many times before, I stuck close to him. I enjoyed helping my dad, even though I couldn't carry things yet. A lot. I was 12 years old. The building where we left, everything was empty, but they gave him the keys so he could leave the goods inside. It must have been a very large house, and that surprised me, because there were already quite a few houses in that village. There weren't even 1,000 residents there, maybe even fewer. Right, and almost all of them lived in old, roughly built houses. And there, at the end of the street, stood that very one. A large house was being built. The very building that can be seen from afar. 2 stories with a terrace. We went there to unload the cargo. And as I said, I wasn't carrying that much, so it took us quite a while. We finished around 8. We locked the fence, and quite tired, ventured back. We were very happy because Mom always made us work on weekends. She always cooked something tasty, warm, and pleasant for us to be waiting for us at home. No one appreciates that more than she does. Hot food, like the food of a person who hasn't eaten anything. And that's what my father was like. So we hurried back. That house was the tallest in the village. From there we saw that only a couple of houses had a small light on. And this despite the fact that it was already dark. It looked like this. There was a beautiful view from there. We crossed the town in just a few minutes. And before we reached the last, as we were leaving, a woman saw us and ran up to us, raising her hands. Please take us to the next town. I will give you everything I have. He meant our town, where we were walking when she said this, and showed us a few coins. The poor thing couldn't even collect 20 pesos. My dad asked her if everything was okay, if she needed help, and the woman insisted that we would take them to the village, that they would sit in the back seat, that we would be safe. My dad laughed. How could this woman believe that my father, a strong man, used to carrying bags of cement, would be afraid of her? She got out of the truck and asked him what happened. He said he would give her a ride, but she wanted an explanation. The woman thanked him and said that her daughter was sick and she needed to take her to town urgently. My father repeated. She said that she would do so and that they should go in. Then the woman made a sign, and a boy with a boyish face but an enormous height emerged from the bushes. He must have been more than 2 meters. I had never seen anyone that tall. He was carrying a young girl in his arms, who looked about my age. Despite her height, her eyes, God, I remember well, they were full of innocence and fear. The woman helped the girl into the back of the truck. My father was silent. I don't know if he wanted anything more explanation. The woman told him to take advantage of the fact that she was sleeping and get as far away from her as possible. Soon from there, while they still could, my father asked her if they were in danger, and the woman said that if they saw his daughter was outside, they could trick her. Not understanding anything, my father went upstairs. The truck overturned due to the weight of the boy, who jumped in and climbed on board. We continued along the road. The road to my village was terrible, dangerous. Whoa, my father was careful, despite the woman behind him, constantly telling him to be careful. Hurry up. After a few kilometers, he said something different, but we didn't understand. Without asking, I leaned half my body out the window and asked the woman what was going on. She looked at me sadly when she realized I was a child. She told me to ask my dad. He told her to hurry, said he gave his daughter some pills, but he didn't want her to wake up. Not halfway there, and not in the dark. I told my father, but he said no, that driving faster was dangerous, that he would continue as he was, and that I should do everything in my power. A terrible sound came from behind us. The truck suddenly stalled. The engine, the radio, everything worked as if it had died. We heard a boy struggling with something in the background. A woman was crying, and muttering something unintelligible, but their voices sounded sad, as if they were crying. I also heard another man cursing. There was someone else with them. My father came out, took his knife, and me. He told me not to move, to lock the door. I remember the sounds of mountains, crickets, the mighty night. The struggle was behind us. My father took 2 steps outside, towards the scene of the attack, and then came back. He told me not to move. No matter what I heard, I was not to get out of the car. I looked out the back window. I could barely see anything between the railings. None of the men were shouting. The girl was speaking. The boy threw himself on top of her, as if trying to hold her back. My father had already carried the box up. He helped. He didn't know who or how, but he heard how the other man was suffering too. Then I heard the girl laugh, as if she was being tickled. Now her voice, and through tears and laughter, she shouted, "Let's go, let's go, let's go!" The radio turned on. My father jumped out of the car. He walked up to the checkout, and stood up, pale, very pale, and he has dark hair. But at that moment he looked, a piece of paper. There didn't seem to be any blood on his face. He started the truck, and we drove down the road. He hit the gas, sped up without speeding. I didn't think about the potholes, or the road, or the ravines nearby. The truck just bounced and bounced, and behind it I saw a woman holding onto a girl, and a boy pinning her to the floor. I held on tight. I've never been so scared in my life. From what I saw, from what I heard, and also, because I've never seen my dad drive like that. I don't even, he answered, but he looked distracted, and twice we almost fell on a turn. He stopped as we were entering my town, and a woman yelled at him not to stop. My dad yelled back, asking where he was taking them. The woman was yelling at him not to stop, to keep going. I told my father. The woman says not to stop, but when he went inside, he stopped the truck, and he jumped down. I felt an enormous weight when the boy jumped. I looked to the right. The girl was running away, and the boy was trying to catch up with her after a few steps, to catch her. The woman ran away, limping, after them, and my father and I, we stayed there, and watched them disappear into the night. We didn't know what happened. It was already dark that day, when they thought I was sleeping. I heard my father. I got up, and pressed my ear to his door. He told my mother that he turned off the engine of the truck, and when he got out to see what was happening in the back, he saw that the girl was floating in the air. The girl was lying down, but it seemed like she was about to fly away, and the boy was holding her with all his strength. She said that she was speaking like a man, that the voice was coming from within her, horrible from within. Do you understand? After that, people from all over the world, that's when my grandfather started telling my father about it, and that's why. That night, almost all of his hair fell out within a few weeks, and what little was left, his face turned pale, became very white. He looked like an old man, although not quite yet. I was about 50. Recently, I was offered a job because of my work. Go up to that village. There are more houses there now, some big and beautiful, but I said no. And since that night, I have never gone there again. My father, and even more so, never recovered from what he saw. Perhaps because we never heard from that woman, or the boy, or that woman again. Little girl. Second story. Prayer to St. Peter. Good evening, my dears. My name is Teresita, and I am very grateful to you all for your support in these difficult times. I am all alone. My 2 grandsons come to look after me on weekends, but Monday through Friday, now I'm alone. And in your stories, I found a window into a world I didn't know. I've never liked horror films, but for some reason I listen to them on audiobook. I listen carefully to this program. I think I know every person who shared their experience, and this is how it ended. I decided to tell my story. In the 90s, my big guy, my husband, may he rest in peace. He was still driving his truck. He was old and tired. Illness had weakened him, and he began taking shorter and shorter trips. Luckily, he had support at work, and they allowed him to do it this way. I don't know about other places, but here the gangsters come very close. Truck drivers, despite the fact that they are honest, have regular jobs, and make good money, are still in demand in the labor market. We're practically forced to deliver our junk to them, to take advantage of their regular trips. That's how they approached my fat friend. They told him that several of his classmates had already done this, but they'd already been noticed, so now they were going to take advantage of him. As often happens, they told him he had 2 options: do it and earn good money, or say no, and suffer the consequences. And my fat, stubborn, stupid son, such as he is, told them to do whatever they wanted. but he brought them nothing, and that was the end of it, at least for a while. For a while. A week later they came looking for him again, and they said the same thing again. They were giving him a second chance. This time they were going to pay him less, but if he came back, to refuse would simply mean not living long enough to tell the story. They asked him how he would maintain his dignity after death, and that really made him think. But then again, he sent them away and said he wasn't afraid, but that was a lie, of course. Then he told me he was worried, that he thought the threats were more than just empty words. From then on, we never went out together again. He always went out alone. He didn't let me use his car anymore. If I left the house, I spend all my time with the neighbors. Even when I go to the store, I'm never alone. Who knows where he got it from, but he even managed to get a gun. Sometimes I saw him peeking out from behind a window. When I heard strange voices in the street, from people who weren't from here, I saw him standing with his hand on the gun in his ear, ready to pull it out. They tormented him with fear, because they hadn't told him anything, ever. They haunted him more than I expected. I felt very bad, and I told someone about it. A very religious neighbor, and we get together to pray, with friends, with an acquaintance of an acquaintance. We went to see Doña Mayo, who came from far away to pray with us, and ask for help, protection. She gave me some red candles in memory of St. Peter. I prayed to them all night, watching them. She told me how to pray to make the fat man invisible to his enemies. And I prayed with great faith, convinced that it was through prayer that I could help him, was the only way left for me. And one afternoon, they were indeed waiting for him. 2 boys, barely out of age, and 1 experienced old man. All 3 were armed, ready to carry out orders, and standing on the corner with the house, clearly visible. And I remember seeing that car early in the morning. I remember feeling something strange, but I did what I always did. I kept asking, St. Peter, make me invisible to my enemies. A few weeks passed, and my eldest son began to neglect himself. Had he stopped being afraid, or had he, tired of it, one of the two? That day, she left on foot. He quickly handed the tool to his friend, another truck driver, who lived 2 blocks away. He passed the hitmen's car, but they did nothing to him. Then the fat man returned with his usual slow, heavy gait. Without, he turned hastily to face them. He moved on, his back to them, and walked. He made it here to the house, and arrived without incident. Just a few minutes later, as we were chatting by the window, we heard the sound of a police car, and then a commotion erupted. A patrol car drove by, and the occupants noticed that the men in the car were acting suspiciously. He approached. Then one of the boys ran away. The other 2 couldn't catch him. He also didn't draw his gun. He was arrested with several weapons. The boy who ran away, he was caught a few hours later. He went to the one he feared most. They took everything from him. This was his first job. My fat boy was a test for him, so he could join the others. The gang, they waited all morning to kill my fat boy, but he said he would never do it. They saw them leave, and stayed, waiting, watching the house, the window, the door, but he didn't come out. And here's the strange thing, friends, because I swear he did it. It happened to them too. Ahead. And then I realized that this sentence is not just figurative. I am sure that St. Peter made him invisible to his enemies for a moment, that it saved his life. My eldest son died many years later, in 2010. A quiet life, especially in his last years. When he stopped driving, he continued to go to the warehouse with his coworkers. I think the new guys, they learned a lot, especially that self-esteem is priceless. And now I ask St. Peter again, for all of them. For those who came after him to work as truck drivers, because drive carefully, so as not to attract the attention of bad people. And today, as I know many people, listen to the radio while driving, as you used to. And today, if you allow me, I will also pray for all of you. Thank you very much for listening to my story. Although there are no ghosts, or anything scary here, like in other films. Third story. The Children of the Mountain Witch. One way or another, I've always worked behind the wheel. I've driven everything from taxis to trucks, delivery drivers, even forklift operators. But now I have to tell you about a short period in my life when I worked as a driver. A small moving truck. It was never my main job, but I drove it while working as a taxi driver. At night, too. My father was sick, and my brothers and I worked as best we could to help. That's why, out of necessity, I ended up taking a long trip, moving from Reynosa to Maulipas to Coatzacoalcos, Veracruz. Huatzile, Tamaulipas, and Veracruz are neighboring states on the Gulf Coast. But anyone who knows us will confirm that these two states, these cities, are on opposite ends of both borders. So this tour, it turned into a journey of over 20 hours on roads in cities that I had been warned could be quite difficult, dangerous. I should clarify that I'm talking about a time when Tamaulipas was completely different from what it is today. It is now a place where it's difficult for anyone to travel safely on the roads. Back then, dangerous places were few and far between, and they were well known, but I still went there with my grandmother before leaving, so he would give his blessing. I didn't believe in anything, but I always knew that something good was with me when he told me that the Virgin of Guadalupe was with me. So whenever there was something important, a new job, or something risky, like that trip, I used to go there with her to get her blessing. So I went there, and then through. My friend's truck, my boss's truck, was already loaded, and I pulled out on the highway, ready to arrive on the appointed day. I arrived at my destination in the afternoon, as planned. The challenge wasn't just getting the truck full of furniture to Coatzacoalcos, but also the fact that it had never been there before. In Veracruz, I had only seen a small beach at the entrance to the state, and that was it. And now I had to go through it all. I'm talking about the days when we didn't have maps on our phones, so I had to pay attention to every detail. I followed the signs and didn't want to get lost. Otherwise, I'd end up in who knows what town. Yes, if I got off course, I could get into trouble. I followed the first moving truck for an hour, driven by my friend and business owner. He had 2 Chargers, and I was driving alone, but I'd arrived just in time. They should download this version too. At least, that was the plan. My friend has always been a hard worker, but unfortunately, in all his endeavors, he always looks for ways to save a little money, and in this case, that's exactly it. Having set off on this trip alone, I remember very well how comfortable I felt in the first few hours of the trip, and how beautiful it was. It was like watching the sunset on the road with music playing, without a single thought. Honestly, I was just thinking about how great it was to be alone. I'm completely serious. I have a hard time starting conversations with people I didn't know, so I just enjoyed the journey in silence, and nothing more. Listening to music and the sound of the truck engine. It was already dark when I left Tamaulipas, and then I realized that I had never driven so far in my life. It was very dark. The few towns passing by seemed deserted and dark, as if no one was there. I reached a section with a lane marked with stripes. It seemed like there was nowhere else to go. I decided to move forward, because if I continued, I would go in the wrong direction. So I made my decision. Now I realize it was a mistake, that I should have gone straight ahead, that it was a mix-up, that I veered off the road. A moment of doubt, a distraction, a last-second decision, but it was very dark. The truck's headlights barely illuminated the road, and I couldn't make anything out. I realized it too late, when my detour took me onto a single-lane road that led away from the road, and didn't seem to be leading me to any town. It wasn't leading me anywhere. It was dark, and I couldn't find where to turn. It was too dangerous to do anything. A U-turn, even if there was room to reverse. So I moved forward, hoping to find a place to turn back, but there wasn't one. I moved further and further, until I saw lights up ahead. A few small houses. I thought I'd surely find it there. A way to get back on the road and continue south. I remember how, having found a place where I could pull off this narrow lane, I immediately stopped on the side of the road. I tried to check the map, still not having the slightest idea where I was, and that's when I felt something. For the first time in my life, I felt something, or come to think of it, tried to feel something. I couldn't explain it. Everything was the opposite. I stopped feeling anything. I was missing something. Ipasinolite. My grandmother's blessing. I didn't feel her presence. I was alone, far from everything. It seemed to me that on that path, next to that dark mountain, there was no one. No one saw me, as if the blessing could not reach me. Just like the Virgin Mary, accompanying me. Guadalupe. That's why when about 40 meters ahead, the lights came on. When she looked out of the window of one of the small houses, and I felt like I had to leave. The world seemed very far away. I accelerated the truck as much as I could, although not much. I drove a little further to figure out where to turn, and when I arrived, not far from the small houses, I saw a path that seemed to lead back to the main road, and I followed it. A man looking out of the window of a small house made some kind of gesture and shouted something that I didn't hear, but I went outside anyway. Then I picked up speed. Luckily, I managed to pick up speed, and leave those houses behind in a matter of seconds. And now I was back on the dark road, barely illuminated by my headlights, but instinct told me that I was already heading back to safety, to the road, to civilization. I took a deep breath, but right in front of me, on the road, I saw a woman walking backwards, barefoot. I saw her just in time to stop, and I ran her over. And as soon as I stopped, someone jumped out at me. At the door, in the dark. Someone else did the same. From the passenger side, 2 men pulled me out in a second, and I realized what had happened. In other words, I was being robbed. That's exactly what I'd been warned about. My friend had told me so much about it. Don't trust any deviations in wrong place, wrong city. Our batteries run out at this time of day, and if you act aggressively, you won't get anywhere. Bills. He told me so much, and that was the first thing I did. And yes, I was incredibly lucky to have pulled off the road in one of those bad cities, possibly in the worst possible way. I was just cooperating. In fact, it would have been better if I hadn't resisted, if I had let them take whatever they wanted, so they wouldn't hurt me. I fell with my hands up, and they pushed me to the side of the road, toward the mountain. As they were driving me, I turned to look at the truck, but then they pushed me again, and I noticed that no one was getting in. They didn't open the box, didn't take anything out, and these 2 guys, a woman, the road, and another person, I don't know where from, were pushing and pulling me into the bushes, forcing me. I went up into the darkness. I turned around again, and before I got hit in the face, and I saw a moving truck, with only its headlights on. Halfway there, I realized they hadn't stopped me to rob me. They had some reason. They were forcing me to climb the mountain. They were taking me there. I remember being really scared. I knew I could only keep walking. They were pushing me, and saying strange things. I didn't understand them, and they were all really angry. Horrible. They were like wild animals. Honestly, it seemed like they were growling at me. I closed my eyes because it was the same thing. Because with my eyes open, I didn't do anything either. I couldn't see anything. It was so dark. I thought about my grandmother. I tried to feel her closeness. I tried to feel her blessing. To believe. To have faith. Like she had. He talked to me so much. And in that moment, I wondered if my fate would get worse. If I kept going. Or if I tried to fight back. To run away. And they hurt me. I convinced myself that if I went up there, no matter what the reason, I would never come back. I convinced myself I had to fight to escape, or at least try. I opened my eyes, pushed one of the men, and he fell into the branches. Without seeing it, I kicked him, and I threw punches. I hit the other guy. I hit the woman. It felt like I hit something small that was trying to bite me. I looked like a child, and then I ran to nowhere, down the hill, back to the truck. I let go of my legs, fell, got up. I saw nothing but the headlights of the truck. I ran and ran towards him as fast as I could. I continued studying. They left him in that state. I got behind the wheel and pressed the gas pedal to the metal, but the poor thing barely moved. In any case, I didn't stop, and if you don't mind, I'd admit that I did. If someone had crossed my path, I wouldn't have stopped. Not anymore. I felt like my life depended on it, on this, to get back to the main road. And when I finally arrived, when I finally did, I started crying. I sighed. I felt almost safe. In any case, I continued speeding, especially because of the poor truck that was parked there. Yes, I noticed that it had started rattling. Its mechanical condition was not the best. I was almost at my destination, but at that moment the last thing I cared about was the engine damage. Despite the noise of the running engine, I thought I heard something. Something that made me turn my gaze to the hill, to the darkness of the mountain from which he had just run. It was there that I saw a witch for the first time in my life, and by witch I mean balls. Fireflies are the ones that fly near the trees. I have no idea what they are, but that's what they look like. They call, and the one I saw was very visible and flew quickly, parallel to me. But there on the hill, sometimes coming a little closer to the road, it would suddenly move away, until it suddenly disappeared, and I didn't stop. I didn't stop for a second. It wasn't long before I finally caught up with my companions, who had arrived at the port of Veracruz, and all that time, I lost. They looked at me in surprise. They asked what had happened, why I looked like that, and I told them everything, just like that, even with the fireball tracking me. One of the loaders, originally from Veracruz, told me that they weren't trying to steal the cargo. They were simply planning to. I was being driven to the mountains to deliver something to me. I was lucky to survive, because what's up there devours, not only your body, but your soul as well. That this area is full of witches, but not like the ones they talk about when they talk about Veracruz or Catemaco. Different witches, forest creatures that have their own cycles. I thought he was exaggerating. He was always like that. He exaggerated and liked to tell stories a little, but I was very afraid of what he was saying. He advised me to consider that there might be at least some basis in reality. I can't even imagine how close I came to such a terrible fate. No matter how much they tell me I was lucky, I somehow feel that I was saved by my grandmother's blessing. And now I always carry with me the small medallion of Saint Benedict that he gave me. I wear it tied to my left ankle. I don't wear it. I take it off for nothing. And most importantly, I always repeat the same prayer to the saint. Pedro will take care of me and my family. I don't know if it's a coincidence. I don't know if I've been in places full of evil before. But until now, I've never felt like I was in a place where his blessing and care didn't reach. Virgin Mary and her saints, thank you so much for your attention, dear community members. Thank you for allowing us to be with you, especially if they're driving, especially if they can hear us from the dark road. Open your eyes wide. The only thing you can be sure of is that one of you will be the next protagonist of the night stories. Have a good rest and a good night, everyone.